Imagine a makeshift stage, tucked in the cramped corner of a modest living room. Around it, siblings stand in a line, eyes locked in concentration, trying to follow the rhythm. But at the center, a child, the smallest of them all, wide, dark eyes filled with life and fear. He's only 5 years old. Yet already, he carries the weight of a dynasty that hasn't even begun. That boy is Michael Joseph Jackson. And this is the story of how pain, talent, and silence shaped the greatest music icon the world has ever known. Gary, Indiana, the 1960s. A city scarred by inequality, heavy with racism, and light on opportunity, especially for a black family with 9 children. Michael was born into chaos, but he carried something different, something invisible to the eye, yet powerful enough to move the world. He didn't just dance with his feet. He danced with his soul. Joe Jackson, his father, noticed the gift early, but he confused talent with duty, potential with pressure, art with product. If I messed up, he'd hit me. It wasn't rehearsal. It was a battlefield. Michael Jackson, in an interview with Oprah Winfrey by 5, Michael was rehearsing for hours every single day. By 6, he was singing for crowds. By 7, he knew the stage, but not the feeling of unconditional love. To Joe Jackson, his children were a mission. And Michael, he was the cornerstone, the prodigy son, the perfect machine of performance, the one who stood out the most, which also made him the one who suffered the most. If he missed a note, there were punishments. If he stumbled, there was shame. And when he did everything right, there was silence. For little Michael, love always came at a cost. To the world, he was a smiling, radiant, gifted child. But on the inside, the cracks had already started to form. Imagine growing up believing you're only worthy of love when you're perfect. Imagine learning as a child that your feelings don't matter, that your tears are weakness, that the stage is the only place where you're allowed to exist. People saw me dance, but no one saw my heart bleeding. Michael Jackson. Michael developed a strange relationship with the mirror and with himself. He didn't want to be seen as that kid from the Jackson 5 anymore. He wanted to be something new. He wanted to be free. But for Michael, freedom always felt like a mirage. Still a teenager, he began to run, not away from people, but into music, into his own imagination, into worlds he built for himself, note by note. In music, he didn't have to explain himself. He could scream what he couldn't say, cry without showing tears, fly without ever leaving the ground. He'd disappear into the studio for hours. Record, record, perfect every sound, every breath, every beat. Not out of ego, but because it was the only space in his life he could control. From the chaos of his childhood, he had learned a brutal truth. If you can control everything around you, maybe you won't feel what's breaking inside you. When Off the Wall dropped, the world was stunned. Michael wasn't just the kid from the Jackson 5 anymore. He was a solo artist and a complete one. Bold, innovative, timeless. He fused funk, soul, disco, and pop into something no one had ever heard before. Something almost inhuman in its precision. But inside him still lived the boy who was terrified of making a mistake. Then came Thriller, the album that changed everything. It shattered records, defied the industry's racism, reimagined what a music video could be, and turned Michael Jackson into the most famous artist on earth. I didn't just want success. I wanted to be eternal. Michael Jackson, and eternal he became, but not without paying the price. When you rise to the top of the world, there's only one direction left: to look down. Michael had reached the peak, but inside, he was beginning to fall. Fame isolated him. Genius distanced him from ordinary people, and the wounds left unhealed began to create new ones. He didn't trust anyone, felt used, betrayed, hunted. He ran from the spotlight, yet needed it to feel alive. His home became a theme park, Neverland. But the truth is, that magical kingdom was a gilded cage. To the world, it looked like eccentricity. But to Michael, it was an attempt to rebuild something he never had: a childhood. He collected toys, raised exotic animals, welcomed children into his home, all in an effort to relive a season of life that had been stolen from him. But the adult world didn't understand. It judged, it mocked, and slowly it turned Michael into a target. Stop. Take a breath. And now, look at your own story. Have you ever been judged for feeling too much? Have you ever felt like you had to perform just to be loved? Have you carried old wounds through your life, pretending you were fine? Michael wasn't some alien, like the world sometimes made him out to be. He was a fragile human being, trying to survive in a world that claps for the performance, but ignores the pain behind the curtain. How many times have you been applauded on the outside, while crumbling on the inside? With time, Michael learned how to smile even when his eyes were full of tears. He learned to say thank you even when all he wanted was to disappear. So he built himself an armor. And that armor was art. But even art has its limits. And eventually, the body starts to keep score. Insomnia, depression, anxiety, a fractured sense of self. And still he kept dancing, kept singing, kept shining, because deep down he believed that maybe the world's love could heal the pain inside. Michael Jackson wasn't just the king of pop. He was the purest reflection of human pain transformed into beauty. And now that you've met the boy behind the star, get ready for what comes next. Because we're about to step behind the velvet curtain into the chaos behind the fame, the scandals, the accusations, the surgeries, the emotional descent, and how through it all he was still trying to save the world through his music. Michael Jackson wasn't just a rising star, he was becoming a global phenomenon. After conquering the world with the Jackson 5, he embarked on a solo journey that would forever change music and pop culture. But that rise was far more complicated than the glitz and glamour of the spotlight could ever reveal. Picture a young boy who, despite having fame and fortune at his fingertips, carried an invisible weight on his shoulders, an unrelenting need to be perfect, never to disappoint, and a burning desire to prove his worth not just to the world, but to himself. This was a path paved with almost military-like discipline and a deep hunger for approval. When Michael began working on the album Thriller, he wasn't just crafting songs, he was carving his soul into every chord, every verse. The pressure was colossal. The entire world was watching, expecting something unique, something no one had ever seen before. And he did more than deliver, he redefined what was possible in the music industry. Visualize those long nights in the studio, under dim lights, as Michael tested every note, every beat. He refused to settle for ordinary. He chased the extraordinary. It was an internal battle between perfectionism and anxiety, between passion for his craft and the fear of failure. Creating Thriller was an exhausting process, but Michael was driven by an invisible force, a spark that kept him going even when his body begged for rest. That relentless determination made him a legend, but it also sowed the seeds of his growing loneliness and isolation. Outside the studio, fame brought personal challenges that few understood. Michael was constantly watched, judged. His comings and goings, his physical changes, his behavior all became fodder for speculation. This only deepened his sense of being trapped in a golden cage where freedom was an unattainable luxury. The staggering success of Thriller elevated Michael to a level where he wasn't just an artist, but a cultural icon, a near mythical figure. But with that came the heavy responsibility to uphold that image and keep astonishing the world. At this point in his life, the balance between light and shadow was more fragile than ever. The dazzling spotlight contrasted sharply with the darkness he battled within a struggle few truly understood. And it was against this backdrop that Michael Jackson pressed forward, not only facing the challenge of creating unforgettable music, but fighting to keep himself whole, while the whole world watched his every move, as if his life were an open book exposed, scrutinized, endlessly rewritten. When Michael Jackson reached the peak of his fame, the world hailed him as the king of pop, but behind the lights and roaring crowds, he was grappling with a storm of personal challenges and controversies that would test not just his career, but the very core of his emotional resilience. Imagine, just for a moment, stepping into his shoes. Slowly, the fame that once brought joy and recognition began to weigh heavily. The pressure to maintain a flawless public image became nearly suffocating. Michael, a man whose childhood was marked by intense training and relentless demands from his own family, found himself caught in a whirlwind of impossible expectations. He was a sensitive soul with a creative spirit that sought perfection in every move, every note, every gesture. But that unyielding pursuit of excellence placed him on a razor's edge, the smallest misstep magnified by a media hungry for scandal, ready to turn any detail into sensational headlines. Michael's life was no longer just about music. It had become a high-wire act, balancing the demands of superstardom with the fractures of his private pain. In the decades following the release of his biggest hits, Michael underwent visible changes in his physical appearance. While these transformations became the subject of countless rumors, they also revealed a man grappling with profound questions about his own identity and self-worth. Amid the complexity of his emotions, he sought a way to feel comfortable in his own skin inside a body that no longer seemed to match the image he had held of himself since childhood. But the public's reaction was often cruel. Instead of empathy, there were harsh judgments, jokes, and prejudice. Headlines fixated on his physical changes, questioned his choices, and fueled baseless theories that gained traction simply because they sold papers. This created a sense of isolation and misunderstanding for Michael, as his true essence was overshadowed by distorted narratives. At the same time, Michael's personal life began to attract increasingly invasive attention. His unconventional childhood, friendships, habits, and even his relationships with children became public targets for scrutiny and speculation. In this environment, accusations and controversies emerged, shaking his public image to its core. For many, it was a shock few truly knew the man behind the artist. But what really matters in this chapter of Michael's life is how he faced these adversities. Rather than succumbing to the pressure, he sought refuge in his art and convictions. Michael believed in music's power to change the world, to carry messages of love, hope, and unity. He used his albums, his performances, and his actions to connect people, to show that even in the face of hardship, it was possible to hold on to faith and optimism. It's remarkable how he managed to keep that flame alive, even as the media and parts of the public turned against him. This strength didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of a resilient mind, a soul that had learned from a young age how to reinvent itself, to shield itself from storms, and to find meaning in its mission. Moreover, Michael dedicated much of his time to social causes and philanthropic projects. Many of these efforts were quiet, away from the spotlight, yet they reveal a side of the artist that often went unnoticed. He invested in underprivileged children, supported campaigns against racism, advocated for animal protection, and fought for a fairer world. This generosity, often drowned out by controversy, is a vital piece in understanding his complex humanity. Reflecting on this phase of Michael S. life means realizing that absolute success is rarely a straight path. It's built on dizzying heights, but also on moments of deep vulnerability. And it is within that contrast that the true greatness of a human being is revealed, the strength to rise again, to grow, and to evolve in the face of adversity. You may wonder, how did someone so exposed, so relentlessly judged, manage to hold on to his emotional balance? How didn't he crumble under the weight of public accusations and constant scrutiny? The answer lies in his core, in his unshakable connection to his art, and in a faith that went far beyond the material world. A faith rooted in spirituality and sustained by hope. Michael Jackson's story during this time is not just the story of an artist under fire. It is the story of a human being, an ordinary man living an extraordinary reality who felt, feared, and dreamed just like all of us. And it's that very connection, that raw humanity, that makes his journey so deeply moving. When reflecting on his life, it's crucial not to get caught up in headlines or surface-level opinions. We must look deeper into the layers of his existence and the profound lessons we can draw from his resilience, from his unwavering ability to keep creating and loving in the midst of the storm. And perhaps the most powerful lesson of all is this: no matter what we ray up against, there's strength waiting to be found within. Michael Jackson was not perfect, but he was real. And he reminded us that even beneath the brightest lights, we are all human with our wounds, our battles, and our boundless capacity to rise again. When Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, the world was consumed by an overwhelming wave of shock, grief, and reverence. The loss of the king of pop didn't just mark the end of a legendary career, it marked the end of an era. One defined by cultural impact, artistic brilliance, and emotional depth that stretched across generations. But Michael's story didn't end there. If anything, a new chapter began. One where the man behind the myth was finally seen more clearly, with all his complexities, contradictions, and legacy laid bare. Picture the moment. Millions of fans across every continent, of every age and background, gathering to pay tribute. A shared mourning that echoed how deeply Michael had touched lives and arts. And alongside that outpouring of love, questions began to rise. Theories surfaced. And the conversation around his life, his choices, and his legacy refused to fade, kept alive, now by his absence. Right after his passing, managing Michael Jackson's estate and image became a deeply sensitive matter. Family members, heirs, and the executives involved faced enormous challenges in preserving not only the artist's rights and legacy, but also the very essence of who he was. This wasn't just about protecting assets, music catalogs, or trademarks. It was a battle to keep alive the spirit and mission Michael always stood for. The weight of honoring his name, while navigating the demands of the market and the insatiable curiosity of the public, was immense. In the absence of Michael, many of the controversies that once orbited around him regained momentum. Conspiracy theories, sensational rumors, and old scandals resurfaced, fueled by those searching for answers or looking to reinterpret the past through a new lens. But for those who truly knew him, his family and closest friends, the mission was clear: protect the memory of the man they loved and admired, and above all continue the purpose he lived for, spreading a message of love, unity, and peace. The way the Jackson family responded to all of this is something that deserves to be highlighted. Amid overwhelming grief and public scrutiny, they had to summon strength not only to mourn in private, but to face a relentless media storm. They worked tirelessly to keep Michael's work alive, releasing posthumous projects, raising funds for the causes he believed in, and striving to preserve the real image of the artist beyond the distortions that fame often creates. And then something remarkable happened. Michael Jackson's cultural impact didn't fade after his death, it expanded. His music continued to inspire generations of artists. His dance moves became a timeless reference. His unmistakable style remained a source of global fascination. Tributes came in all forms, from large-scale concerts and museum exhibits to social campaigns and documentaries. His legacy proved to be not just lasting, but alive, evolving, and deeply rooted in global culture. But perhaps the most profound reflection this phase of Michael's story offers is a question about fame, memory, and humanity. When an icon of this magnitude is gone, what is it that truly remains? Is it the flawless performer, the carefully crafted public image? Or is it the stories, the emotions, and the lessons he left behind? In Michael's case, the answer lies somewhere in between, and most of all, in his extraordinary ability to connect people through the power of his art. His legacy is like a flame passed from hand to hand across generations. A flame that, despite the storms, continues to light the way for those seeking inspiration, for those with the courage to be different and the strength to face their own battles. This story also reminds us that even after death, we can't control how the world will perceive our journey. What we can control is what we choose to do while we're here, how we act, the love we share, the authenticity we nurture. Above all, Michael Jackson was a human being trying to stay true to himself in a world that so often demands masks. And for you, the one listening right now, this journey is more than just a biography. It's a powerful invitation to reflect on your own life. What masks are you wearing? What stories are you choosing to tell about yourself? And most importantly, what legacy do you want to leave behind? The king of pop taught us that success and fame can be achieved, but true greatness lies in the courage to be authentic, in the strength to face adversity with resilience, and in the power to turn pain into art that connects, heals, and endures. Now that we've explored the challenges, the controversies, and the enduring legacy of Michael Jackson, get ready, because Act 3 will take us to a powerful and emotional conclusion. A message that speaks directly to you, designed to inspire transformation in your own mindset, a mindset of success, healing, and true overcoming. Michael Jackson's death in 2009 wasn't just a moment of loss for the music world. It marked the beginning of a chapter filled with challenges, conflicts, and deep reevaluations. It revealed how incredibly complex it is to deal with the legacy of someone so monumental. When a figure this influential leaves us, they don't just leave behind a void, they leave behind an immense responsibility for those who remain. And in that space, stories about Michael continued to unfold, some filled with love and reverence, others clouded by controversy and wildly different interpretations. For the Jackson family, the fight to preserve Michael's image and safeguard the business empire he built quickly became an almost daily battle. Just imagine the overwhelming pressure of managing the legacy of a global icon, all while the public and media scrutinized every move, often with sharp and unforgiving eyes. What could have been a moment of rest in death instead opened the door to countless difficult decisions, legal disputes, posthumous projects, and an intense effort to keep the flame of his artistic mission alive. The first crucial step in this posthumous journey was managing Michael's assets. His wealth and the rights to his music, videos, and brand had to be handled with immense care, not just to ensure financial return, but more importantly, to protect the legacy he spent a lifetime building. Names like John Branca and John McClane were appointed to oversee his estate, and their mission was clear: to breathe new life into Michael's career. Even after death, but always with the caution that it would never slip into pure commercial exploitation. And that was no easy task. The responsibility went far beyond financial management. It meant crafting a narrative that preserved Michael's essence as an artist, a humanitarian, are revolutionary while preventing conspiracies and controversy from hijacking his public image. In a way, this battle holds a powerful lesson about legacy and memory, the importance of owning your story, or, when that's no longer possible, having people you trust to do it for you. Michael Jackson, even in physical absence, continued to speak through his music, his visuals, and everything he left behind. But the way that message was received now depended on those who remained. Meanwhile, for the global public and his devoted fans, the feeling was that Michael never truly left. He became almost like an invisible force, one that continued to inspire, to comfort, and to move people. His music became a soundtrack for pain, joy, and resilience. His creative spirit pushed new generations of artists to break limits, to strive for greatness, and to dare to be different. Still, collective mourning and celebration were inevitably entangled with controversy. Unresolved accusations, conspiracy theories, debates over his public image and personal life, all of it took on a new dimension after his passing. For his family, it was a time of extreme exposure, but also of unbreakable unity, as they came together to protect what Michael represented to them and to the world. It's important to understand how the Jackson family responded to this storm. Michael had siblings who are not just artists and business people, but people who are deeply connected to him on a soul level. The fight to preserve his memory, to release unreleased albums, to organize tribute concerts and documentaries became part of an ongoing mission. A mission not only to honor the legacy, but to keep alive the very spirit of the artist, his message of love, peace, and unity. But beyond the family, what did the world learn from all of this? That life is made up of seasons. Success, fame, controversy, and even loss are all part of a greater journey. Michael Jackson reminds us that no one is perfect, that fame never erases our humanity, and that a true legacy is built in our ability to transform hardship into art, pain into connection, and chaos into inspiration. This first part of Act 3 opens the door to a deeper reflection. How do we face our own mortality? How do we make sure that what we build continues to matter after we're gone? For Michael, the path was anything but easy. But his light didn't fade. On the contrary, it transformed into an eternal flame that continues to touch millions around the world. As we continue this final chapter in Michael Jackson's story, we enter a space that goes beyond events and timelines. This is where we uncover the deeper truths, the powerful mindset he embodied, the resilience he lived by, and the enduring lessons his life and death still offer to anyone willing to listen. Michael wasn't just a brilliant artist. He was a man who faced enormous challenges, especially in the final chapters of his life, when controversy and personal struggles tried to dim his light. And yet, even in the middle of the storm, his resilience and commitment to his purpose never wavered. He showed the world that real success isn't just about talent, it's about having a solid mindset, a clear vision of what you want to build, and the courage to face whatever stands in your way. His influence in music, entertainment, and pop culture is beyond measure. Every step he took, every innovation he brought to life, became a benchmark. His perfectionism, his relentless drive to innovate, his passion for the craft, those are qualities that every dreamer, every entrepreneur, every person chasing something big should take as a living example. But beyond the external achievements, Michael Jackson left us a deeper message. We are more than our circumstances, no matter how difficult they may be. He was born into a large family, endured intense criticism, lived under the pressure of fame since childhood, and yet built a career that forever changed the history of music. He proved that your origin doesn't define your destiny, and that limitations can be broken through focus, dedication, and a growth mindset. And that's the very mindset this channel, Success Mindset, exists to cultivate in you, listening to this story right now. the ability to learn from every challenge, to turn every setback into a new opportunity, and above all, to believe even when the road feels impossible that the journey is always worth it. In the wake of Michael's passing, something else came to light, something powerful and deeply human, the force of community. Millions across the world continued to celebrate his life, to share his music, to keep the flame of inspiration alive. It showed us that what we build in this life can transcend time and space, that our legacy can become a living force fueling hope, creativity, and resilience in others. The tribute concerts, the exhibitions, the films and documentaries released over the years, they're not just commercial ventures. They're echoes of a purpose, a way to preserve and amplify the transformative message that Michael carried so powerfully throughout his life. And through it all, the Jackson family, despite the pain, the controversies, the legal battles, stood firm in their efforts to protect that essence. They knew the true mission wasn't just to manage assets, but to preserve the soul of his legacy. And that delicate balance between business and emotional legacy is one of the most powerful lessons anyone can learn. Whether in your career, your relationships, or your personal growth, what you build must come from something real. When you reflect on all of this, you start to see that true success goes far beyond wealth or fame. It's about impact. It's about the difference you leave behind in people's lives. It's about inspiring others to dream bigger, to fight harder, to transform themselves through their own battles. Michael Jackson embodied that. He was living proof that even in the middle of chaos, criticism, and pain, you can create something so powerful that it continues to touch lives long after you're gone. And now, before we dive into the third and final part of this last act, take a breath. Just pause for a moment and ask yourself, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? How can your story, your struggle, your choices, your truth become a force for good in the lives of others? That reflection is the soul of success mindset, because understanding the journey of someone like Michael Jackson isn't just about learning a biography. It's about capturing what makes us truly human, the search for meaning, the pursuit of purpose, and the courage to keep moving forward no matter what. And now, we arrive at the final stretch of this journey, a moment where Michael Jackson, even in death, remains one of the most iconic, misunderstood, and deeply inspirational figures the world has ever known. When Michael passed away in 2009, the impact was instant, global. The world didn't just lose a pop star, it lost a symbol, a voice that had united generations, races, and nations. The grief was overwhelming, the tributes endless. Streets were flooded, vigils were held, and for a brief moment the world stood still to honor the king of pop. But what followed wasn't just mourning. In the aftermath of his passing, waves of legal disputes, controversies, and conspiracy theories began to surface. The Jackson family was thrown into the spotlight once again, not through music or performance, but through courtrooms and headlines. For many fans, it was a confusing and painful time. And yet, through it all, Michael's family stood strong, determined, unified by a purpose bigger than any lawsuit or scandal, to protect the essence of who he was, to preserve the soul of his work, his message, and his dream. And this is where success mindset finds meaning, because life isn't made only of victories. It's forged in the fire of storms, in the pressure of adversity, in the weight of legacy. And what matters most is how we rise. Michael's journey teaches us that even amid chaos, we can lead with clarity. Even when the world misunderstands you, you can still choose to create, to love, to lead. His ability to unify people of every background, his fearless innovation, and the emotional power of his music, all of it is a call to action, A call to us to rise, to create something that matters, to leave behind a mark that lives far beyond our time. But Michael S. story also reminds us of something just as important. Our mental and emotional health matters. Balance matters. Holding on to your essence, your truth matters, especially when the pressure is at its highest. After his death, the world didn't stop listening. New generations discovered his music. Artists drew inspiration from his craft. Tribute shows, posthumous albums, and documentaries kept his fire burning. Not because of marketing, but because of meaning. Because true greatness leaves an echo not in charts, but in people. And so, as we close this story, let this truth settle deep into your heart. Real success isn't just about money or fame. It's about impact. It's about how deeply you inspire others to become more. It's about choosing to rise even when life knocks you down. It's about building something that will outlive you. Michael Jackson did exactly that. He stood tall through pain, through controversy, through unimaginable pressure, and still, he changed the world. And now, the question turns to you. How will you use these lessons? What kind of story are you writing with your life? What kind of legacy are you creating with your daily choices? This is the core of success mindset, not just to tell stories that move you, but to awaken something inside of you. Because if Michael Jackson taught us anything, it's this: no matter where you come from, no matter what you've been through, you have the power to rise, to create, and to leave something unforgettable behind.